This is our weekly live for our supporters and paying subscribers. And once you have the opportunity to ask your questions, this does go onto Substack, but it also sometimes goes elsewhere. So we are starting just a little bit early. Let's give it a couple seconds before. And I've gotten some questions from you in advance as well. Some people who weren't able to make it submitted questions via Instagram, but also via Substack, via the personal chat. I don't know, what is it called? DMs? Anyway. Okay. Hi, everybody. Colleen Patrick-Goudreau here. I am an author and speaker and animal advocate. Basically, I do whatever I can to give people the tools and resources they need to live as compassionately and healthfully as possible. And I love getting your questions because I just love the variety of questions we have. We have some questions related to animal advocacy. We have some questions related to being vegan. We have some questions related to nutrition. So I'm just going to get into them now. And as you join and as you have any questions, you can certainly ask me any. So one of the questions I had was from someone who said, when I weigh out a teaspoon of creatine, it's well below the 3 grams. It's well below the 5 grams that is recommended. It's more like 3 grams. How much are you actually taking? So I was really glad for this question because I was doing certainly a heaping teaspoon of creatine every time I take it, and I wasn't measuring it. I do use a scale for cooking, but I wasn't measuring out the creatine. And once I did, after I got this question, indeed, it was kind of more around 3 grams, which is really interesting because I thought I was taking 5 grams of creatine. So now I am taking a heaping tablespoon, and I'm giving that to David as well. So we are taking a tablespoon of creatine, and I weigh that out, and indeed it is 5 grams. So I'm so glad you asked that. I've had no GI issues. So some people report having GI issues when they take higher amounts of creatine. And I think it really depends on the kind of creatine you're taking. I'm taking creatine monohydrate. I'm taking the creatine from Complement. They source from a reputable source in Germany. And that is the creatine I take. And so I think when you're really mindful of the source of the creatine and making sure you're getting creatine monohydrate, then I don't think you should have any GI issues. I certainly haven't had any, and I definitely increased by a lot. So I will keep doing that. And thank you for asking that question. So yeah, tablespoon is about 5 grams, but you can weigh it out yourself if you're interested. That's the first question. Thanks for that. And then another question came related to creatine, saying to me that me, mentioned that I was going to be looking to take higher amounts of creatine than the 5 grams. Why? What are the benefits of doing that? And have I started doing that? So, well, obviously, I've already increased the creatine I'm taking because I was taking only 3 grams, it looks like. So I'm taking 5 now. And would I take more? So the answer is yes. And I actually remember hearing Dr. Stacy Sims say something about how she takes creatine when she's traveling to help mitigate jet lag. And I thought that's really interesting because my understanding about the benefits of creatine has to do with the fact that creatine basically saturates all of your cells. And so how would there be a benefit to taking an acute amount, an amount that's like for an acute issue like jet lag? How is that going to be beneficial? And so I dug deeper, and I really, really appreciate understanding this even more. So because creatine is one of the most researched supplements, there's a lot of data out there. You can go to a website called Creatine for Health, and it has all of the studies and all of the research being done about creatine and all of you could read the papers or you could read the blog posts from the people who write this blog and have this website. And so basically what it tends to show is that the benefits that we see of creatine that are researched so well, especially around muscle benefits, the 5 grams seems to be what we want and what we need for the benefits to our muscles. And again, the bodybuilding industry, people who were in the bodybuilding industry, they were taking kind of more like 20 grams a day, and they probably still are. But for average folks like me and you, and especially those of us who are lifting heavier, I'm doing 5 grams and I feel good about that. However, where there tends to be some benefits also is in the cognitive support. And I've talked about this as well. And so there was a study specifically around the benefits and how creatine might help with people who are sleep deprived. So that could be people who are new parents, that could be students who are staying up late to study, it could be jet lag. And so the study actually used about 20 grams of creatine to see if it had a benefit on brain cognition, specifically around sleep deprivation. And indeed, there are some really promising results. So that means, and that's what's really interesting, is that the saturation effects tend to be the benefits for muscle, but there does seem to be benefits for possibly taking a higher amount for things like sleep deprivation. So I'm definitely going to try that when I'm traveling and see if that helps with jet lag. So there's your answer there. Will I take 20 grams to help with jet lag? Probably not, but maybe I'll double it. So maybe I'll go from 5 to 10 and we'll see. So basically, that's why I was looking at doing higher amounts, because there do seem to be benefits specifically around cognition for higher amounts. Okay. All right. Next question. The next question is, what podcasts do you listen to? I don't know if you're going to be interested in the podcast I listen to. I don't listen to anything related to veganism. I write my own, but I listen to a lot of history podcasts. So the podcast I listen to almost on a daily basis is The Rest is History with Tom and Dom. It's my absolute favorite podcast. And then I also listen, so Tom Holland and Dominic Sambrook, they're both British. And then I also listen to Tom's brother, James Holland, has a podcast with his partner, his business partner, his podcasting partner. I can't remember his name right now, but they have a World War II podcast, and that is called We Have Ways of Making You Talk. And I love that podcast as well. So if you want to go deep into World War II. And then what else do I listen to? I listen to Dan Harris, 10% Happier, because I really appreciate him and the guests he has on. And I also listen to History Extra podcast. I listen to Dan Snow's History Hit. I listen to The Ancients, which is a history hit podcast. And I listen to Mary Beard has a podcast now. It's brand new and it's called Instant Classics. So I listen to mostly history podcasts. For research, I will go, specifically to podcasters who, like Simon Hill, but that's usually when I'm doing kind of research on a particular topic, but I don't listen on a regular basis. So anyway, thanks for asking. Okay, so I have a question. How are you able to give your fosters away? I would never be able to do it. I could never do it, is what the question is. So, I talk about this in A Year of Compassion. I have a podcast episode on fostering, and it's really interesting because, with anything, especially with something that's hard, I think having a plan, I think, is really, really, really important. And certainly one of the things I talk about is working with an organization that has a network, because, if you are doing this because it's a temporary thing and you're not looking to bring in more animals, this could be applied to dog or cat fostering, then the last thing I want is to not know what's going to happen. And then I would, be in a position where I'd have no choice but to keep the animal. And if that's not your plan, then that's not a great outcome, because that's not what you were shooting for. And so for me, the fact that I am working with Cat Town, which is an incredible organization and really reputable, and they have an entire network, and I'm just one of the, the hubs in their network. That's what's really helpful. Same thing with the organization I used to work with, Maine Coon Adoptions, where same thing. I worked with Elaine. I knew these cats because I used to kitty cuddle, and then the ones I fostered, I knew they had a place that had their own outreach. So I think it's really important to work with an organization that has a network that you can really trust. And that if there's a time where you just feel like you can't foster anymore, or something's going wrong, or there's not a fit, or it's not working, or you have to go away suddenly, that these cats or dogs can go to a place where they're going to be safe and they're going to be part of a network where they can get adopted, because that's the point. So the goal is, I say the goal is goodbye. That's, from other people smarter than me who have used that phrase because that's the point. The point is to give them a kind of soft landing in a place where they could be safe and be sheltered and loved while, you know, with the end goal of having them adopted. And Cattown especially works with cats who are coming out of shelters, so they're shy. Some of them might have, issues. Some of them might be kittens. So it really depends. But the idea is to work with cats to socialize them, give them a safe place so that they can then go back to Cattown and be adopted. And so when I hear, I said this in a post yesterday, it is not helpful when someone's fostering especially when the news is now, okay, it's time to give the cat or dog to the organization so they could be adopted. Why don't you keep them? Why don't you adopt her? Oh my God, they're so sweet. How could you let them go? Why don't you adopt them? There is a bit of a veiled criticism in that. And I don't think people really know that or realize it or mean to be critical. But there is this veiled implication that I'm doing something wrong by not adopting them. And I don't think that's really helpful because that's not my point. My whole goal is to give them this temporary home so that they can go then get adopted. So that's how it works for me. I'm really clear about my boundaries. And the next question, actually, from the same person was, how is Michiko doing? So for us, I know people who foster who bring the cats out into, or dogs out into the main home, and they are part of the main home during that fostering time. I personally could not do that. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm able to foster is because I absolutely have a boundary in my head, like emotionally. Of course it's emotional. It is emotional when I say goodbye. I cry every single time I let go of a foster, and that's okay. I can cry and then move on. But what I do emotionally to kind of keep a boundary is to keep them separate from my cats. In the past, it was obviously Charlie and Michiko, but now it's just Michiko. And so I keep the fosters in my office, and that works really well. And I don't in any way kind of get soft on that. There is no time where I'm like, maybe it would be fun if they met Michiko. No, there's none of that. I don't even go there. So the door stays closed. I put a towel underneath and I put another towel next to that. And then I put kind of stuff right up against the door so that when Michiko passes by, of course she knows there's a cat or cats in this room, but she just feels confident that no one else is going to kind of invade her territory. And this is her territory. So she's doing fabulously well. And that's because I manage this really, really well. Now, Marjorie, who I just fostered, was an exception in the sense that she was the only cat here in the room. I do prefer to foster pairs who are already bonded. In the case of Marjorie, she was left as a solo cat because she had 6 kittens. And so we fostered 6 kittens and Marjorie. And then the kittens went off to the adoption center. And then Marjorie was left by herself to be here for a week. The whole point to give her body time to relax and for her to just acclimate before we brought her to the cat town, to cat town, so that she could then acclimate to other cats and kind of be in the adoption center so that she'd be visible to be able to be adopted. So having one cat in here is always a little more stressful just because I feel bad that they're here by themselves. Now, she's fine. We're in here all the time. David comes in to do some work. I come in here to work. I come in here to play. I come in here to feed her. I come in here to clean. So I'm in here a lot, but it is a little easier when there's 2 cats because they can then, entertain each other. I'm also managing Michiko because I don't want her to feel threatened. I want her to feel like she's also got me. And she knows that things are a little different. We have her litter box up in our bedroom. We have her food in our bedroom. So we're feeding her in our bedroom. We close the door at night so she's with us in our bedroom. So we do all of these things so that she feels really safe and secure, and it works. So I am in my office. I am in my office now. There are, the door opened. There are no cats in here, and it feels really good to have my office cleaned again. And yeah, she came in yesterday. I cleaned before I had her come in. I'm in the room when she first comes in here after the cats are gone. And she came in, she walked in, she smelled a little bit, walked back out. And now she's kind of acting even a little more like Michiko. She's spending more time downstairs. She's in her bed in the living room, which she wasn't doing. And it's only been a day. So she's great. She's adjusted. She's acclimated. She's already kind of, back to normal. And that's because I manage it really carefully. One of the questions I got from you was, did David get his omega-3 test results back? And this is in response to the fact that I had done a series of um, omega tests based on the amount of omegas we were taking, and then we were taking the omega index test, and we were very low. And then we increased, and then we tested again, and our omega index went up, and then we were at that amount for about a year, and we tested again. So in short, yes, we got his results, we got my results. So for a year, we were taking about 1,100 milligrams of DHA and EPA combined, and we're at a steady just below 7%. On the index range, 8 to 12% is optimal. And just, obviously 4 is low, 6 is intermediate, and between 8 and 12 is optimal. So we are now taking 1,500. We will test again in 6 months, and I will see if we've gotten up more. A question related to that was, am I taking flax and chia seeds, even though the conversion of ALA, which is the fat in flax seeds and chia seeds, has a really poor conversion to DHA? The answer is yes. There are definitely other benefits to eating flax seeds and chia seeds beyond just the DHA and EPA, and that is fiber. So making sure we're getting enough fiber is so key for our microbiome, for our just our gastrointestinal health, to prevent any kind of colon disease, colon cancer, just so many reasons, regulating our glucose. There's just so many reasons to make sure we're getting fiber, and chia seeds and flax seeds can be one of them. Also, the lignans in chia seeds, especially in flax seeds, not as much with chia seeds. They're a phytoestrogen, really important, again, for regulating all of it, just regulating our glucose, increasing our antioxidants. It's just so many good things. So yes, the answer is, even though the conversion of the ALA from the flax and chia seeds to DHA and EPA is really poor, really there are a lot of benefits to taking or eating flax seeds and chia seeds. And always remember, with the flax seeds, you do want to grind them if you want the benefits for absorption. If you want to keep them whole for different reasons, you can do that. They're going to be more of a non-soluble fiber at that point. They're just going to help everything move through your system. But for other benefits like antioxidants and inflammation or anti-inflammation, you're going to want to grind them first and then just pop them in a smoothie, pop them in, oatmeal, overnight oats, whatever. Good stuff. Okay. I think I'll just take one more and we'll say goodbye. So, oh God, I've got a few questions here. Which one do I want to answer? Okay. So, yeah, I mean, one of the questions, I'll go on to animals, was, what's one thing we can do to support wildlife at home, which I really appreciate. Thank you for that question. So there's quite a few things. What's one thing? Oh God, I'm going to give you more than one thing because I can't help myself. I would say, first of all, how we talk about wildlife, I think, is so key for other people seeing them as benefits and not as nuisances. So talking to our neighbors and the way we talk about animals, even the animals who other people would see as nuisances, like skunks or squirrels or deer because they eat their plants, or raccoons because they're getting into the garbage cans. If we can talk about them in a way that demonstrates their benefits, possums, for instance, that eat, like 500,000 ticks a day or something like that, reduces the tick population. So that's great for reducing Lyme's disease. When we're talking about the benefits of skunks, they are diggers and they're always digging into the soil. So they're aerating the soil. When we're talking about raccoons, I mean, they're literally the scavengers of wild animals. So there are just benefits. I mean, not that we have to talk about them as being beneficial to humans for them to have their own inherent value, but I do think that's how people kind of measure the benefits of wildlife and lots of things. So the way we talk about them, I think, is really important. Putting out water for wildlife, I think, is really important, especially as we're talking about birds, but also mammals, and remembering that every animal, and even the different birds and the different types of birds, like different types of water. So whether it's moving water in a fountain, or water in a tray on the ground, or water in a bird bath, above the ground. Other things you can do to support birds feeling safe to drink that water is making sure there's something for them to perch on nearby. So I put an empty tomato cage near some of my water vessels, whether it's a fountain or a bird bath, or just put them near a tree and put them in the sun. Birds want to be in the water when it's warm. They don't want to just like take a really ice cold bath. So those are a few things with water. And what else? In a year of compassion, I also talk about making sure we have supplies in our car, in our garage, just so that if we have an emergency situation where we need to help a wild animal, we have towels, we have gloves, we have a box ready to go, and we don't have to be frantic. Also, having the phone number of your local wildlife rehab center in your phone or animal control in your phone so you don't have to worry about finding Wi-Fi. Because if you are searching for, especially if you're traveling, if you're searching for a wildlife center and you can't get Wi-Fi, then you're not going to be able to find the help you need. So having them in your phone. So those are just a few things I would have to say about wildlife. And there's so many ways we can help them. But I do think if you got a year of compassion, it has so many ideas for living compassionately and healthfully. 52 weeks of living zero waste, plant-based, and cruelty-free makes a great gift. So maybe it's something you could consider for the holidays. So I think that's it. Thank you for your questions. And this will go out. You will already see this by the time you get to the end of this video. But thank you for being a supporter here on Substack. And thank you for being a follower anywhere you are a follower. I appreciate you. For the animals, this is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.